The year is 2024. Donald Trump is back in the White House. For many in the European Union, this isn't a cause for celebration. It's a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the turbulent years of his first term. The EU remembers the trade wars, the insults, the threats to NATO. They remember a US president who seemed to view them not as allies, but as rivals. Now, with Trump back at the helm, a sense of unease settles over Europe. Will it be a repeat of the past 4 years? Will Trump's America First agenda once again put him at odds with the EU? These questions loom large, casting a long shadow over the future of transatlantic relations. The EU knows it can't ignore the Trump factor. It has to prepare for a new reality, one where the old rules no longer apply. The stakes are high. The EU and the US are deeply interconnected, economically, politically, and militarily. A rift between them would have far-reaching consequences, not just for Europe and America, but for the world. The EU must tread carefully, finding a way to work with Trump without compromising its core values and interests. It's a delicate balancing act, one that will require all of the EU's diplomatic skill and resolve. The relationship between the US and the EU has always been complex. It's a bond forged in the fires of World War II, strengthened during the Cold War, and tested in the 21st century. But under Trump, that bond frayed at the edges. His disdain for multilateralism, his skepticism of NATO, and his cozying up to authoritarian leaders like Vladimir Putin sent shockwaves through European capitals. Trump's America First rhetoric struck a nerve in Europe, where it was seen as a rejection of the shared values and interests that had long underpinned the Transatlantic Alliance. His decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, his imposition of tariffs on European steel and aluminum, and his constant berating of NATO allies for not spending enough on defense all contributed to a growing sense of unease and distrust. For the EU, Trump's return to the White House raises serious questions about the future of the Transatlantic Alliance. Can this relationship, once considered the bedrock of the liberal international order, survive another 4 years of Trump? Or will it crumble under the weight of his nationalist impulses and his disregard for the rules-based international system? Trade wars are never pretty. They leave a trail of economic casualties in their wake, disrupting supply chains, driving up prices, and costing jobs. And when it comes to trade wars, Donald Trump is no stranger. His first term saw him slap tariffs on goods from China, Mexico, Canada, and yes, the European Union. The EU, a major trading power in its own right, was caught in the crosshairs of Trump's protectionist policies. His tariffs on European steel and aluminum, imposed under the guise of national security, sent shockwaves through the European economy. Retaliatory tariffs from the EU followed, further escalating the trade war and raising fears of a full-blown global trade meltdown. Now, with Trump back in office, the spectre of trade wars once again hangs over the global economy. The EU, heavily reliant on trade with the US, knows it's particularly vulnerable. A full-blown trade war with the US would be devastating for the European economy, potentially pushing it into recession and undermining the fragile unity of the bloc. Few issues have caused as much consternation in European capitals as Donald Trump's approach to Russia. His apparent admiration for Vladimir Putin, his skepticism of NATO, and his willingness to overlook Russia's annexation of Crimea and interference in Western elections have left many in the EU deeply uneasy. Trump's first term was marked by a series of head-scratching encounters with Putin. From their infamous summit in Helsinki to Trump's repeated praise for the Russian leader, he questioned the value of NATO, calling it obsolete and suggesting that the US might not come to the defense of its allies if they were attacked. For the EU, Trump's Russia policy represents a major security dilemma. Russia, with its nuclear arsenal and its history of aggression against its neighbors, is seen as a direct threat to European security. The EU has imposed sanctions on Russia over its actions in Ukraine and has sought to strengthen its defenses in the face of Russian assertiveness. But Trump's approach, which often seems to prioritize appeasing Putin over confronting him, undermines these efforts and raises serious questions about the future of European security. Section 5. A Planet in Peril: Climate Action on the Chopping Block. Climate change is one of the defining challenges of our time. The science is clear. The planet is warming, and human activity is the primary driver. The consequences of inaction are dire, ranging from more extreme weather events to rising sea levels to mass extinctions. The Paris Agreement, a landmark international agreement aimed at limiting global warming, was a rare bright spot in the fight against climate change. But Donald Trump, a self-proclaimed climate change skeptic, pulled the United States out of the agreement, dealing a major blow to international efforts to address this global crisis. Trump's return to the White House is a major setback for climate action. His administration is expected to roll back environmental regulations, promote fossil fuels, and undermine international efforts to combat climate change. For the European Union, a strong advocate for climate action, this poses a major challenge. Section 6. A leaderless union. The EU's struggle to find its footing. The European Union is often criticized for its bureaucratic inefficiencies, its lack of a unified foreign policy, and its tendency to punch below its weight on the global stage. These criticisms, while not entirely unfounded, often overlook the significant challenges inherent in managing a bloc of 27 member states, each with its own history, culture, and national interests. However, the EU's ability to navigate the choppy waters of global politics is further complicated by a lack of strong, decisive leadership. The EU's top job, the President of the European Commission, is often filled by consensus candidates who lack the charisma and political clout of national leaders like France's Emmanuel Macron or Germany's Angela Merkel. This lack of strong leadership is particularly problematic in the face of a US president like Donald Trump, who respects strength and despises weakness. Trump's transactional approach to foreign policy, his disdain for multilateralism, and his willingness to use economic and political pressure to get his way require a firm and united response from the EU. However, the EU's fragmented leadership structure and its lack of a coherent foreign policy vision make it difficult for the bloc to present a united front. Section 7. A sea of uncertainty, navigating the storm of Trump's policies. The return of Donald Trump to the White House presents the European Union with a sea of uncertainty. His unpredictable nature, his disdain for traditional alliances, and his willingness to prioritize American interests above all else make him a difficult partner for the EU to navigate. The EU must prepare for a range of potential challenges, from renewed trade wars to increased pressure on NATO to a weakening of the rules-based international order. It must also be prepared for the unexpected, as Trump has shown time and again that he is willing to upend the status quo and defy conventional wisdom. Navigating this turbulent environment will require the EU to be agile, adaptable, and united. It will need to strengthen its internal cohesion, develop a more assertive foreign policy, and seek to build alliances with other like-minded countries to counterbalance US unilateralism. Section 8. A call to action, charting a course for a turbulent future. The challenges posed by a second Trump presidency are significant, but they are not insurmountable. The EU has the economic weight, the diplomatic experience, and the moral authority to play a leading role in shaping the global order, even in the face of American retrenchment. To do so, the EU must embrace a more strategic and assertive approach to foreign policy. It must move beyond its traditional focus on soft power and be willing to use its economic and political leverage to defend its interests and promote its values on the global stage. This will require the EU to overcome its internal divisions and speak with one voice on issues of global importance. It will also require the EU to invest in its own defense capabilities and to work with like-minded partners to strengthen the rules-based international order. Section 9. Conclusion. The stakes are high for Europe. The return of Donald Trump to the White House marks a turning point in transatlantic relations. The era of American benevolence and leadership is over. The EU can no longer rely on the US to underwrite its security, to support its economy, or to champion its values on the world stage. The stakes are high for Europe. The EU must rise to the challenge, embracing a more strategic and assertive role in world affairs. It must be prepared to defend its interests, to promote its values, and to shape the global order in a way that reflects its own vision of a more peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future. The world is watching,
So hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and let's turn the page on a new adventure together. Get ready to experience books like never before, only on VBook 360. Like, comment, and share to support the channel and keep the video magic alive. Thank you for stopping by. And remember, every video has a story, and every story deserves to be shared. See you in the next video.